I'm Ian, and this is my story.
I'm a terrible artist, by the way, so no pressure to make it a Picasso.
believe me, you won't be.
I think the main issue with getting myself off the street was that I had to have the mental attitude of myself that I wanted to make that step. Although I was approached probably several times by outreach teams initially, I didn't at that time feel that was the way I wanted to go. But then, after a period of probably a couple of years, I got it into my head that was what I wanted to do, and then I would follow the leads that they were giving me. And at that particular time, an offer was put forward to me about a new hostel that was opening in the area for people my age and above, and I felt that might be the course that I should take, and I wanted to follow that route, and that was my first, really, the initial positive contact that I had with an outreach team, and it was what set me off on the road to getting my life back together again. I think the turning point was, as I say, I was approached by an outreach team who had some photographs and paperwork that they wanted to show me regarding a new style of homeless hostel that was being pioneered in the City of London. Basically, it was more of a homeless hotel. Shall we say, it was specifically aimed at people over the age of 55, with no serious alcohol or drug problems, and it just seemed to appeal to me and to how I wanted to get my life back into normality. When I moved into this particular place, there was support there if it was needed, but if they could see that you were making the effort to do things yourself and to get your life sorted by yourself, they would let you carry on and do that, and only if you felt you needed guidance from them or support from them, you could always turn to them at any point. But they did give you, as I say, this independence to, if you were set on the right course, to just carry on and do it yourself. And in my particular case, that was what I needed, and like I say, once I had, in that situation, had a roof over my head and an address, then I was able to just to get my life back in order purely by myself, just with their slight intervention as and when I needed it. Yeah, I think the issue that's very often the case is that there isn't the continuity of support that for people when they do come off the street. They can be contacted by an outreach team who can direct them to a homeless hostel, etc. But once they're in place in that particular hostel or location, there isn't, in a lot of cases, any continuity of support after that, so that people can become bogged down in one particular place, and then support for whatever needs they have, be they mental health issues or drink or drugs or gambling. There's no continuity to try and help with those problems, and I think more charities need to talk to each other. That charities tend to be a bit isolated. They don't talk to each other very well, and they don't necessarily have the links or continuity with people like the NHS or other organisations that can deal with the basic problem that got that person homeless to start with. So I think there needs to be more liaison between charities to provide that support and that continuity of support. Well, having sat on 2 government grants panels, distributing money from the government to homeless charities. I feel there needs to be more representation of people who have actually been homeless on these panels, and for them to input their experiences. On one particular grants panel I sat on, there were approximately 12 people on the panel, and there were two of us who were described as experts by experience, in that we had been homeless technically. However, I found out that the other person who was technically homeless had actually only been sofa surfing, but hadn't actually slept on the street as I had for a considerable period. And of course, nobody else on the panel had any experience of homelessness themselves. So I think the money was, in this particular case, distributed to charities throughout the country. But I don't think there was enough due diligence carried out afterwards to ensure that this money was spent for the purpose it was intended. And I'm sure that a considerable amount of it was used on purely to keep the charities running, but it wasn't actually getting through to the person in the cardboard box on the street, and they weren't actually seeing any benefit from this money. So I think there needs to be more care taken in how money from the government, or even money from donations, is actually distributed and used, just to make sure that the people it was intended for are actually benefiting from it. I think to quote one particular type of instance, I think that a lot of the general public have the misconception that somebody on the street, if they give them some money or make a donation, that person can just go to a homeless hostel and pay for a bed for the night. But unfortunately, that's not how the system works. The vast majority of charities run their hostels on the basis that the people they take in are in a position to claim housing benefit, and that is what keeps the hostel going, and pays for the staff to run it. I think there is this misconception that by giving somebody money on the street or on the train or on a bus, that they can then go and get a bed for the night. Sadly, is not the case. And to get a bed in a hostel is considerably more complicated than that. So I feel people may be a bit misguided in that respect. I'm sure that would be the case, because there are already at least two organisations that I know of. A choir called the Choir with No Name, who have choirs in various cities in the country, London, Birmingham, Manchester, consisting largely of homeless people who get the benefit of joining together with other people and sharing their experiences and singing. They organise concerts in various locations, obviously selling tickets for people to attend, and that raises money to progress their organisations and for more people to get involved. And there's also an organisation that recruits homeless people with a talent, basically. So, for instance, someone I knew was quite good at doing magic tricks. Somebody else was quite a good guitarist. And they basically built a show out of homeless people's various talents, and again found a venue which charged very little for them, and then again sold tickets and raised money that way. So there are revenue streams, I think, that can be made from getting people to perform for free, basically, but it provides a revenue from the ticket sales, which again can be used to good purposes. I really have a strong opinion about this, that the initial step that is needed in the vast majority of cases here is one of housing. Not necessarily, anything plush, or but people need to have the roof over their head, and they need to have an address. This is the really important part of people getting their lives back in order. There are, I know, a couple of charities in the northeast of England who have purchased and are still purchasing small terraced houses, which they fit out basically to allow 2 or 3 people to move in, and charge them just a low rent whilst they're unemployed. If they become employed during the time that they live in the property, then the rent increases slightly. But in all these cases, it gives the homeless person an address, and that is really important, not only for job opportunities, but for claiming benefits, for receiving lost documents. Maybe a lot of people have lost their birth certificates or things like this, and they're able to retrieve them and get copies and things if they have an address that these things can be sent to. And they can only, in most cases, they can only claim benefits again if they have an address. So I think we have so many sort of cheaper properties in various locations. We have a lot of empty properties in cities and in the countryside as well, which for not vast amounts of money could be made into livable accommodation, and that would set an awful lot of people back on the road to recovery and to receiving the necessary help that they need. Because if you're on the street, you've got no address, and that's just a major barrier to getting your life back in order again. I feel that's a really important step, that we need to provide this basic housing that can really help a homeless person get themselves back into normal life and back on the road to recovery. I think the obvious thing is to involve a number of homeless people in the decisions, or the route that the organisation should take. Having experienced a situation like that myself, where I was the only truly homeless person on a government grants panel of 12 people disputing £20 million of taxpayers' money, I think there needed to be more than just myself involved. It needed representation from a slightly more varied homeless direction. Obviously everybody who's homeless has their story and has their reason for being homeless, or has issues that have made them homeless. Every case is completely different, and so it needs that diversity of people to be involved in the decision-making process, and in trying to guide which direction funding, etc., should take. I think my route would have to be to go back over some of the things I've said before, in that my initial reaction would be to find that person a roof over their head, which hopefully could be partially funded by this project, and then once that was in place, then I would want to establish a joined up process of supporting that person through whatever agencies or directions they needed, basically. I think that is the problem with the situation today, that doesn't happen in an awful lot of cases. It breaks down very quickly, and I would hope that I could establish a more secure train of events that would help someone to fulfil themselves and to get back into society, and through a joined up process of support, basically. Well, having been on the street without the sort of the influence of drink or drugs, etc., I did get a clear view of things. One particular event that sticks in the mind is I regularly used to sleep in the doorway of a solicitor's in Victoria, in London, and one Saturday night, must have been about 3 o'clock in the morning, I heard someone tapping on my cardboard box that I was sleeping in. I lifted the cardboard to find a very smartly dressed young man in his 30s sat on the steps in front of me with a Cornish pasty in his hand. When I opened the box, he looked at me and he said, "Oh, I brought you a Cornish pasty." And he produced a second Cornish pasty from his pocket and gave it to me. He said, "I've just been out clubbing and I'm on my way home to his address, which was near Sloane Square, a very affluent area of London." He said, "I thought you might like a pasty." He said, "I've seen you here before." So I said, "Thank you very much." He said, "So are you going to eat it now?" He said, "Well, because I want to eat mine." So we sat there at 3 o'clock in the morning eating Cornish pasties and passing the time of day. So he went on his way and I went back into my cardboard and fell back to sleep. But however, 2 weeks later, there was another tapping on my cardboard. Lo and behold, there was the same man with the same pasties, wanting the same conversation. And this continued on for several weeks until after about 3 or 4 weeks, and nothing had happened. And I began to worry about him then, wondering where he'd gone and why he wasn't coming anymore. But it's just one of the slightly unusual things that can happen to you on the street. I'm Ian, and this is my story.